All right, folks, we're doing this. How's everybody doing today? Rudy, Alpha Investments, and the long-awaited questions and answer with the head guy of Flesh and Blood over at Legend Story Studios. So we compiled a list of like the top 30, like 20, 30 questions that the public and from the Flesh and Blood Reddit and my patrons wanted to know the answers of, and I said I want the toughest and most uncomfortable questions we can possibly ask. So that's what we have today, folks. So it's probably going to be a two-part video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question. I'm going to read you James's answer, which is the head guy of Legend Story Studios, who pretty much created Flesh and Blood. And then I'm also going to show, as I'm reading it, I'm going to show you guys the written response from him. So you'll actually see it in writing word for word on the screen also. And then after each question, I'll give you guys my opinion. And then we'll move to the next one and see how long it takes. I expect these to probably be pretty long videos, so we're probably going to have to break this up. So, in order, these questions are in order based on the number of people who wanted to know the answers. The amount of, I guess, upvotes or thumbs up or however this stuff works on social media. So the first question that everybody wants to know regarding Flesh and Blood because of the success. Here's the first question, everybody. Will there be a reserve list or some form of promise to protect card values in Flesh and Blood? As we see many Flesh and Blood cards increase in value, many stores and collectors are nervous of a price crash due to reprints. So question one here, everybody wants to know, or asking the company, are you going to make reserve lists? What are you going to do to protect these prices of the original first editions, or what's going on? Are you going to reserve lists? I mean, what are we doing? So here's his answer. I'll put it up on the screen, everybody. So James says a reserve list would create significant problems for the game's longevity because of our non-rotating card legality model, which we believe better serves fans, stores, and collectors by creating long-term utility of card ownership and does more to support card prices over the long term than other games which use set rotation models. We are very cognizant of the impact reprints can have on the values of cards on the secondary market. Our approach will be guided by our experience over 25 years as personal collectors and business professionals in the industry. The area of the product that we have carved out specifically for investors and collectors is the cold foil cards. It is our intention that cards that appear as cold foils in a product labeled with a first edition badge, or in the case of Welcome to Wraith, Alpha Print, will not be reprinted as cold foils again. This is the model we have introduced with WTR and Arc Unlimited, with the original cold foils being reprinted as rainbow foils in Unlimited. We have always been open with our intention to support a thriving secondary card market. Our reprint philosophy has been published on our website since before we launched, which can be found under our Rules and Policy Center of fleshandbloodtcg.com. All right, so back to my face if you guys want to see it. I don't know how much that covered, probably the whole screen. Interesting. So essentially, from what I gather on this answer, Legend Story Studios, managing this new game that's all hot and crazy now on the hype, essentially, no, there's not going to be a reserve list of any actual card with a specific utility to play the game. They reserve the right to reprint any of the hot fabled cards or the super chase cards. But what they are doing out of respect is if you want the cold foiled original versions, those are essentially a pseudo reserve list. That's what I'm gathering here. So this is a very interesting thing. So essentially, they don't want the utility in the game and the playability of the game to be impacted by expensive cards. They want people to be able to join the game, buy an $80 box of unlimited printing of Welcome to Wraith, and play the game without having to buy a $3,000 cold foil first edition blah, blah, blah. I think this is a very interesting approach. Obviously, we don't have any data long-term to see how this works, but it seems like a good direction to go. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, you want to protect the original versions, and the way to do that is to have the cold foil so they stand out. But at the same time, if you never reprint the card at all, the utility of the card will kind of be locked out and it'll be a pay to win. And by segregating the two, I think this might be, it sounds like a happy medium, and hopefully this works out. That's my opinion, everybody. I don't know if any other card game really does that. So they reprint the card, maybe Yu-Gi-Oh, or they reprint the card itself, but keep the original, like a cold foil version. Like, in other words, a certain printed version, or maybe a certain artwork or something. So that's interesting. Okay. So that's your answer. So essentially, if you're looking for placing bets, or you're saying big money, no whammies in Flesh and Blood long term, essentially, if you have sealed product of the originals, or if you're going for the single cards, the big money is going to be in the first printing cold foil high-end cards. If you just want to play the game, you don't care about all the evil investors, unlimited versions for you. You can build anything you want. The prices will stay very relatively normal because they can reprint it and everything like that. So pretty cool. Okay. Question number 2. Will there be a standard rotation? I think we already touched on this. I believe when a hero... Now, this is interesting. This was the most upvoted thing. Let me read it again. Sorry. Will there be any standard rotation? I believe when a specific hero, wins 10 tournaments, the hero should be retired. But what are plans for long-term balance to prevent the game from crashing like most other CCGs? So that's it. In other words, everybody knows most games collapse. Most games don't stand the test of time. Everybody's very skeptical. Can't blame them. All right, so let's see what they say. How we want to manage card legality is part of the design DNA of Flesh and Blood. Our goal is to give fans long-term utility of their collection while creating dynamic metagames through cards fluxing in and out of the format, as dictated by which heroes are legal at any given time. I'm not a fan of rotation card legality models. To me, that's the same as banning 1,000 cards a year from your primary format, just framed in a way that consumers have been trained to accept as normal. Well, that's interesting. It's like banning 1,000 cards a year, but wow, that's an interesting way to say that. So, from what I gather, the way the Legend Story Studios stands on this is that, interesting. So, kind of, I don't know how it's going to work long term. Like, I get it. But I guess people are always afraid of just a certain combo that becomes so OP and just overpowered, it just ruins everything else. I don't know. There's your answer. I don't know how that one's going to age. We'll see. I mean, there's no way to predict this until time unfolds. All right. Here's a good one. Question 3, everybody. What will stop Flesh and Blood from dying out like most other TCGs over the last 20 years? Do you guys think you can break the bad trend? Boy, that's a pretty commonly asked question if you ask me. All right, let me read you guys their answer. Being at the heart of the industry for 25 years, as a consumer, an OP leader in New Zealand, and a distributor, I have observed and learned from many TCG failures that have occurred. We will break the trend. Well, that's some confidence. Because our organization is filled with people that push and push and push themselves until the job is done to the highest standards we hold ourselves to. We spent 7 years not just designing the game and the IP, intellectual property, world, characters, and lore, but designing and refining the core business capabilities required to succeed. A great game with weak business systems will 100% fail. We have a great game and a great business by design. What do you all think? So I noticed James is emphasizing quite a bit on the pretty substantial amount of experience in the industry and designing games and how much work went into actually engineering Flesh and Blood. I had heard, and I think I read on their website and from other people that, I was aware they spent 7 years building the game, which is a very long time. That's a lot of confidence. I hope he's right because, I don't mean to derail the video, but, in 2015, the Force of Will guys said the same thing. The game was exploding in the US, and the management of Force of Will ruined the game and downturned it. Now, the new people running it now have stabilized it, where it's not dead, but it's not booming like it was in 2015. It's stable. And, that's what a lot of people are referring to in Flesh and Blood. Are they going to be able to keep it growing and not just being stable or crashing? That's a lot of confidence, I have to admit. That's... I don't know. Boyd's going to have some interesting comment section for everybody in the videos. I'm really going to be interested to see what you all are saying. In the comments below, by the way, if you guys can put, if you're commenting about a specific question, put, question number 1 in an opinion, or question 3, my opinion. Try to label so we know which question you guys are referring to. All right, here we go. Question 4, everybody. How many boxes, print run question, how many boxes of Alpha, WTR, and ARC were printed? Are there really only 1,100 legendaries from each set printed? This number was extrapolated by the community based on confirmed number of 550 hearts being in circulation. No need for an exact answer, but an estimated range would be helpful on each release. So let me let me read the answer first. Sorry. Okay, so the company's answer is we launched a collector center on FABTCG.com, fleshandbloodtcg.com last week. And it can be found under the game menu. We will be publishing the exact size of the print run on the collector center in due course. The numbers you quote are in the ballpark of the Alpha and First editions. So, let me explain how big of a deal this is. I have never, in my history of Magic the Yu-Gi-Oh-ing and poking your mom and all these things, seen a company that's they're calling it the Collector Center. I'm gonna check that out. Last I checked it out, it was under construction. I'm gonna check this out. They are gonna list each product and how many are actually made. Now, if you notice a couple things, they specifically stated 1,100 legendaries from each set. If you're not aware, 1,100 was the exact same quantity of Alpha Rares printed in Magic in 1993. So again, everybody, you're going to notice a lot of crossover on Flesh and Blood and what's going on with the origination of MTG in the 90s. These guys are obsessed with Magic. They're huge fans of the industry, and they're trying to build something that's going to make it long term. So print run release data is quite an extraordinarily, it's quite a bold move. Let's put it that way. That's a very bold thing. Okay. Wow. Okay. My opinion on that is, again, for everybody wondering, I have a very simple answer to those of you asking about the money and investors or sealed boxes and Flesh and Blood. It works like this. If the game continues to be successful, the sealed product and the original stuff will go up in value. If the game crashes and burns, like most other TCGs, like you guys are asking questions on, the prices will come down. It's very blunt. I'm not going to try to tell you guys it's only going to go up, it's only going to go down. The product is going to derive, the product is a derivative of James and the company. Whatever the company does, that the pinpointed price point, I don't know, that's terrible wording. The price point on these items is going to trace the success of the game. It is what it is. All right, well. Oh boy. All right, question number 5, everybody. How are you going to handle power creep with cards like the old Findle Spring Tunic? Some people call it Tonic, Tunic, which is in basically every deck since it's so strong. It's such a good card. Okay, here's a longer answer. We took our time, 7 years, developing Flesh and Blood, so we could really explore and map out how it can evolve over time through intelligent design rather than power creep per se. Regarding the Spring Tunic, it really isn't in every deck. If we look at the New Zealand National Champs from September 28th, 2020, which to date, because of COVID, is the best representation of very competitive tournament play. 50% of the top 8 decks did not play that card, including the winning deck. Don't get me wrong, Tunic is one of the best cards in the game, and we knew it would be, which is why it carries I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, Findle's name. However, the Tunic's prevalence is somewhat due to the small card pool that exists right now. As more chess pieces are printed, competition for that equipment slot will heat. Competition for that equipment slot heats up. You can already see that with Crucible of War introducing Blood Sheath Skeleton, which is widely regarded as being better than Tunic for Runeblade. Similarly, classes that have their own legendary chess pieces, which currently is Mechanicologist and Guardian, typically bypass the Tunic. This is what we saw with the New Zealand Champs in the top 8 decks. I expect Tunic to be an important part of the game for a long time, but its prevalence will diminish as more chess equipment options become available. Okay, so you guys can go back to my face, I guess. So essentially, from what I'm extrapolating from James's answer, The company doesn't seem very concerned at all about power creep. He seems to say that as more choices, and I'm going to pause here. That answer reminds me of Path of Exile and Diablo 2 or Path of Exile. Not as much Diablo 3, I know. In other words, what he's saying is as more builds in different set pieces come along, people are going to be building creative new combinations, and there won't be a, how do I say it? I think the company is trying to tell us that there's not going to be a best in slot piece. Does that make sense? In other words, for those of you not familiar, in Diablo and Path of Exile, when you have your chest pieces, your helmet or your armor or bracers or legs or shoes or boots or whatever, there's what they like to call set pieces, where if you wear a certain helmet and a certain armor with a certain weapon together, there's a bonus stat added. I have a feeling the company is going to go in a direction where all these different combinations of items are going to create all kinds of variables where there will not be a set number one item that has to be in a particular slot on your, the items or your different armor that you start with in the game, which in theory sounds great. Now, if the company, if Fab can pull this off and Legend Story Studios can maintain and actually make that work, only time will tell. That's an interesting answer though. So from what I'm seeing is they don't seem very concerned about power creep. You guys agree with that? That's kind of what I'm getting here. All right, question number 6. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in the environment of big corporation-backed games like MTG, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh? And how do you overcome that? Do you think the big guys are going to try to stop your growth? Do you think they will engage in shady tactics to slow down Flesh and Blood or cut off distribution? Wow, that's now that's a question. So before I read the answer, this question, which was one of the top ones again, question number 6, was people are wanting to know, because of the success and the growth and how it came out of nowhere, is WotC or some of these other companies going to do stuff to try to stop them or say, because there have been things in the past where distributors are forced to, hey, if you want Magic the Gathering as your distributor, you can't sell Flesh and Blood. If you want to sell our product, you can't sell to anybody else. There's been things, this is a very common thing in the board game distribution world. This is a very big deal in video games, board games, D&D, tabletops. This has happened in a lot of industries. So, let's see what the company says. Let's see how they plan on handling this. A big challenge was and is getting retailers to give the game a chance and put it on the shelf. It's understandable with the very high failure rate of TCGs that retailers were and still are apprehensive about stocking a game from an independent publisher. What we are trying to achieve is different from other major publishers in the market. We are focused on areas of the industry that other publishers have moved away from or don't prioritize like they used to. I think that Flesh and Blood can coexist along with the big boys. And I hope that all participants in the market engage in ethical and merit-based competitive behavior. James, never met you in person. Love you a long time. And I'm pulling for you guys. I should have bought into you guys' company or something so I could have ownership. I want to believe you, but dude, these companies are nasty out there, dude. Some of these corporate monsters are nasty. And I hope you're prepared to handle if these guys come after you. That's all I have to say. The more successful Flesh and Blood gets, with Channel Fireball carrying it in videos and tournaments, if things, moving into 2021, 2022, if this game continues to expand, and I'm on the record, I believe it will, maybe not this fast of a pace, it's going to have to calm down, at least in theory. Force of Will didn't until they screwed up. These big companies are not going to be happy with Flesh and Blood, and I do have concerns about that. Laying it out there. So, fingers crossed, man. Whew. Okay, boy, that's a good... See, that's the thing, Rudy time. Rudy answer. That's the thing. Everybody's been burned so many times on card games failing, and the price is going to 0 or going to 2 cents on the dollar. It's brutal. It's brutal. And it hurts. It makes people not want to try Flesh and Blood. That sucks. It does suck. The number one thing I hear is people who don't want to try Flesh and Blood because they're afraid that it's going to go to 0. All right. Well, there you go. All right, where'd we leave off at? That was question 6, folks. Next, question 7. Okay, this is good. Would you consider adding first edition or unlimited to the cards as well, not just on the sealed booster boxes? So people are asking, like Pokemon. Pokemon has first edition stamps. Flesh and Blood, there's no first edition or unlimited stamping on the cards. It's just the sealed box. And of course, the cold foil cards can only be, if you have a cold foil card, it's either a promo or it's from a first edition box. It's a first edition card because you can't, it's the only option. So by default, it's first edition. People are wanting to know, will they stamp the regular cards? Here's an answer that I didn't expect. No! No. To a card stamp or marking on the cards. It would ruin the aesthetics, the visual appeal we have so carefully crafted. What we are planning from Monarch Unlimited printings onwards is adding a U to the set code that is printed on the bottom of the card. Oh, okay. So something like U-Mon128. Okay. All right. So wait, okay. All right. Okay. So technically they're not going to stamp the cards first edition or make a special marking, but technically, I guess starting in Monarch moving forward, I guess there's technically going to be a marking? Not really a stamp or anything, but I guess where the serial code, like the card, the set name and the card number, I guess we'll have a U for unlimited. So technically, I guess you will be able to differentiate between first edition and non-first edition for regular cards. Okay, I didn't know that. All right. Before we go any further, for those of you still watching, 20-something minutes in the video, you're clearly very interested in this like I am. I want to add a couple things that I'm aware of privately between conversations with this company. The things that they are planning for 2021 and this big Monarch thing coming, I'm going to tell you all something for a fact. From what I gather with the artists involved and the mechanics involved and what Monarch is going to bring to Flesh and Blood, I have a feeling, and I know this is going to sound like Rudy shilling or something ridiculous, but my whole life revolves around cardboard. And let me tell you all something. From the bits and pieces I have knowledge on, this big Monarch thing coming, which is the 4th set in Flesh and Blood already, is massive. This is no joke a game changer. Like, I get the first set, the second Arcane, third Crucible. Hey, honestly, between the 3 of them, kind of still biased to Arcane. I was a huge Arcane. The Arcane Rising, man, that just... Crucible's my second. Actually, the original set's my least favorite. The second and third really is what made me want to expand and do more videos and the game growing. And the second and third... The first set was fine. I got nothing against it. I thought it was good. It was just a unique game. But the second and third, really expanded on the different heroes and the young heroes and the weapons and the armor and the equipment or the gear or the uniques, and just... It's really developing, and from what I see coming with this Monarch, I tell you what, folks, I know this is tough to believe, but 2021 is going to be either the biggest Flesh and Blood year, or it's going to ruin the game. It's going to make or break it, and obviously, fingers crossed, it explodes and does great for everybody involved. But compared to how big of a year 2020's been for Flesh and Blood, 2021 is going to be out of control, man. All right, that's all. I wanted to say that. Here we go. Question 8: Are you okay with early product being so expensive to obtain, and do you think making an unlimited version of the set will calm the market down? Also, how much influence was Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering on Flesh and Blood? Okay. All right, so James says, we designed Flesh and Blood for collectability, especially the quality of our art and craftsmanship. Over 1,000 design hours went into crafting the card frames alone. 1,000 hours making the card frames of Welcome to Wraith? Holy smokes, that's crazy. Ultimately, though, the market decides if something is desirable to own and what its value should be. That's a really good statement. I have to admit, I am surprised to see how fast some of the cards have reached the levels they are at. I have played Magic the Gathering since the school days of 1995, and it was the greatest passion of my life for many years. I have the most respect and appreciation for Magic the Gathering and many of the people at Wizards of the Coast who have poured their hearts into creating magical experiences for fans around the world for the past 3 decades. The fact is, MTG today is a very different product and experience than it used to be. What MTG has become doesn't align with what we want Flesh and Blood to be. Ooh, that's a boy. There's a little mudslinging. There are elements of what MTG was that are fondly remembered by the team at Legend Story Studios, and likewise, we believe, by many TCG fans around the world. Well, that was an intense answer. So essentially put, as I told you guys in Rudy's opinion, James in Legend Story Studios wants Flesh and Blood to march the same tracks as Wizards and Magic's success of Magic from the 90s. And there's the answer I know many people also asked about that may or may not made it to the next few questions was, a lot of people are unhappy with the direction of MTG because Magic is doing so much printing, so many flashy, we're in this flashy era that we left the Bronze Age, this new flashy chase card, all these variants. I think what James, and this is Rudy's opinion, what James and Legend Story Studios is saying is, they're not happy with the direction Magic's taking because the greed monster's taken over and it's not focused on the mechanics and the unique nature of Magic, which is what made it Magic in the 90s. And I understand that. And most of you watching who've played Magic for at least a couple years or long term, you understand what that means. And I get that fully. So I can definitely tell Flesh and Blood definitely is not happy with the direction of Magic right now. And they believe that and again, remember, Magic is taking this direction because the market's absorbing it, and the market is throwing money at Wizards. So, there you go. All right. I guess one more question, question 9. To what degree do you monitor the secondary market, and how does that play in your decisions around new products? Do you monitor the secondary market? James' answer, and the company at Legend Story Studios, their answer? Yes. Okay, so yes, they watch the secondary market. They see the prices. They're aware of everything going on. That's it. There's kind of not much of a question there. Question 10, and I guess we'll wrap up today's video for part 1. First off, I don't even know what Flesh and Blood is. So my question would be, how do you introduce or tell people about this game and what it is? What is its longevity projection? There are so many TCGs that have come and gone for the reasons, should I invest, don't mean financially, just time and effort into this game. Is this game going to die in 2 years? Blah, blah, blah. No one in my ear is playing. Okay, similar as before. People are skeptical. They think it's going to die. Why should I put my time in even learning how to play? All right, well, here you go. Equip your hero, prepare to fight. It's immersive. You're a hero. At the start of the game, you suit up your hero with equipment and weapons from your inventory. And from turn 1, you're playing at full power, attacking and defending in first person, not by creatures you summon. That's a really good answer. Big reason I encourage everyone to try Flesh and Blood is there are 0 non-games. 100% of the games are interactive. Truly innovative, patent pending, game system is designed to reduce the variance that sometimes causes non-games to happen with other TCGs. Every single hand cycle, you can do something to engage with your opponent. And nearly every Flesh and Blood game feels like it was a good game. A really key piece for us is thinking is resonating with retailers and fans around the world is culture. We are an indie studio with a heart for gaming. We know what's important to players in local game stores because our company is full of gamers and folks from around the world at LGSs. Our roots run deep in the industry, and we want our love for the industry to be felt through with our products, programs, and appreciation. Thank you for taking the time to try the game. I completely agree. Time is the most valuable asset and investment you can make. Simply put, James and Legend Story Studios is telling anyone who's actually still watching this video 30 minutes in to just try the game. Don't buy the expensive first editions. Buy the regular unlimited cheap stuff. Try the game. That's how confident he is in it. Wow. It's the end of part 1.